There was a crib in our living room. I hadn't bought it. I hadn't been told it was coming. I just walked in from work one day, exhausted, carrying a soggy bag of groceries, and there it was, fully assembled, pale wood, pastel blue bedding, a tiny mobile spinning slowly like it knew something I didn't. I stared at it for a full minute before even putting the bags down. Then she walked in. Mara, calm as anything, holding a receipt in one hand and her phone in the other. It came early, she said, like she was talking about a new microwave. Isn't it cute? I didn't respond. I looked at her belly flat. No bump. I looked back at the crib. That's not ours, I finally said. My voice cracked halfway through the sentence. She blinked like I just said something childish. Well, no. But it will be, she replied. In a few months. My heart dropped. You're pregnant. She nodded. 10 weeks. It didn't make sense. We hadn't been close in a long time. Not since January, and it was already April. She blamed stress, work, hormones. I believed her. Like an idiot. I was still standing. I hadn't even taken my shoes off yet. The groceries were leaking onto the rug. And then she dropped it. It's not yours, Curtis. But we're still going to raise it together. That's when the refrigerator beeped. I'd left it open. That beep saved me. It gave me a reason to move. To do anything. I walked over, closed the door, and turned around slowly, like my body was afraid of what it might see if it moved too fast. You want me to raise another man's child? She didn't flinch. I thought you'd understand. You're stable. You always say you want to be a dad someday. Someday. Not to someone else's. Mara sighed. Not like she was sorry, but like I was being unreasonable. She stepped closer and touched my wrist, and I swear, I felt nothing. No spark. No warmth. Just a stranger in my house, touching me like she still had that right. I thought you'd step up. I thought you loved me more than your ego. My ego. That word echoed in my skull like someone had dropped a rock into a deep well. She wasn't asking me, she was telling me. She'd decided. She'd replaced me in the most permanent way imaginable, and now she expected me to be grateful, to smile and rock a baby that shared her face and his eyes. That was the moment something broke. Not loudly. Not with shouting or slamming doors. Just a silent crack, deep inside me, like a frozen lake giving way beneath my feet. I didn't speak. I didn't argue. I just picked up my keys, stepped outside into the cold drizzle, and walked away from the crib, the groceries, and the woman who thought I'd be too weak to leave. She still doesn't know where I went. She still texts me like I'm coming back. But I'm not. The morning after I walked out, I sat in the parking lot of a rundown motel off I-195, holding a plastic spoon in one hand and a cup of fruit yogurt in the other. I hadn't even slept. I spent most of the night staring at the popcorn ceiling, counting each time I heard footsteps above me and wondering if Mara had called the cops, thinking I'd gone missing. Or worse, hoping I'd feel guilty and come crawling back. But no one came looking. Not a single call. Just a long, dead silence from the woman who thought I'd stick around and play daddy to a stranger's baby. I checked my phone. 17 messages. Only 2 were from Mara. The rest were from her sister, her best friend, and her mother, each one worse than the last. You're abandoning her during a pregnancy? She made a mistake, but you're being cruel. It's not the baby's fault. The one that stopped me cold was from her best friend, Jenna. She wrote, you knew she needed more affection. You were always distant. This isn't just on her. As if my quiet nature, my preference for peace over chaos, somehow justified her climbing into another man's bed. As if her betrayal could be blamed on me not doing enough laundry or planning enough spontaneous weekend getaways. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I opened the motel drawer and shoved my phone inside it. I couldn't listen to another person tell me I should have sacrificed my spine to make her feel better about her choices. You know what no one asked? Who's the father? No one cared. That detail was just omitted. Like it didn't matter. All that mattered was that she was pregnant, and I was supposed to be the fallback. The emotional safety net. The man-shaped Band-Aid. So I drove. I didn't even pack a bag. I just kept moving, stopping for gas station coffee and stale breakfast sandwiches. I ended up in a town I'd never heard of called Pineford. It smelled like pine trees and diesel fuel. I found a one-bedroom rental with peeling paint and a landlord who didn't ask questions. It was perfect. I got a burner phone. Changed the name on my work email. Told my boss I needed extended leave due to a family emergency, and somehow that was enough. I had savings. No kids. No pets. No one relying on me anymore. Well, no one entitled to. 2 weeks passed. Then 3. I ignored every call, every message. At one point, Mara emailed me a photo of a sonogram. The caption just said, "Still time to come home." Come home? She still thought the house we shared, the one where I paid every mortgage bill while she spent her days finding herself, was mine to return to. She didn't get it. That place became a stranger's home the second she bought a crib without asking me. But what broke me wasn't the email. It was the envelope I received in Pineford, slipped under my door like something out of a low-budget thriller. No return address. Just my name in neat handwriting. Inside was a receipt. Not from the baby store. Not from a hospital. It was from a pharmacy. She'd already filled a prescription for prenatal vitamins under my insurance. She'd used my name. My coverage. That wasn't a mistake. That was a message. You're still on the hook, Curtis. No apology. No ownership. Just quiet paperwork and manipulation. And that's when something inside me switched. If she wanted to play legal games, I could too. I contacted an attorney. Not a loud, aggressive TV type. Just a quiet, thorough woman named Miss Trowbridge. I told her everything, every ugly detail, and she said something that made me sit up straight. If she lists you on the birth certificate, Curtis, it's not just emotional. It's financial. You could be liable. I had no idea. I thought walking away meant freedom. Turns out, it was just the beginning. She wasn't just trying to get me back. She was trying to lock me in place. Legally. Forever. That's when I made my next move. A move she never saw coming. A move that would make her realize I was done playing the fool. But that part's just getting started. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy Googling how to prove you're not the father. But there I was, 3 in the morning, sitting in a dim corner of the Pineford Public Library, fingers shaking over a sticky keyboard, scanning websites that treated my life like a courtroom drama. The air smelled like old carpet and toner ink, and somewhere in the back, an ancient vending machine kept coughing like it had a cold. Turns out, if your name ends up on a birth certificate, whether or not you're the biological father, you can still be legally responsible. That single fact made my heart drop into my stomach like a stone. And the worst part? If Mara wanted revenge or control, she could easily fake that moment. Just scribble my name and let bureaucracy handle the rest. I didn't sleep that night. Again. Instead, I went back to the rental, turned on the dull yellow kitchen light, and started going through every document I had from our marriage. Tax records, health insurance statements, scanned IDs, anything she might have used. I had never thought twice about sharing my personal info with her before. We were married. I trusted her. Now, I had no idea what she was doing with my name behind my back. That next morning, I booked a meeting with a second attorney, a guy named Nolan who looked like he hadn't smiled since the 90s. He wore a frayed brown tie and always checked his watch when you talked. But man, he knew how to navigate legal landmines. He read through the notes I jotted down and gave me a slow nod like he'd seen this kind of mess way too many times. "She'll either come after your name or your money," he said, deadpan. "Maybe both. The longer you're gone without taking legal action, the easier it is for her to say you abandoned her and the unborn child." I asked him if disappearing was the wrong move. He didn't sugarcoat it. Yes, but it's not irreversible. You need to take control before she defines the narrative. The narrative. That word stuck with me all day. Because Mara was good at spinning one. She always had a way of making herself the misunderstood soul. Even when she was cruel, she looked composed. Even when she lied, she made you feel guilty for doubting her. I remembered our last Christmas together. She got drunk on red wine, told my mother I was emotionally unavailable, and then cried in the bathroom for 45 minutes when I asked her not to insult me in front of my family. That was her pattern. Hurt. Twist. Mourn. Repeat. Now she was doing the same thing, except this time, it involved a crib and a growing life that wasn't mine. After the meeting with Nolan, I drove to a small testing clinic 2 towns over. I signed up for a voluntary DNA registry, not to prove paternity, but to have documentation in place that I had nothing to do with the child biologically. I wanted something official. Something real. The technician gave me a tight-lipped smile like she'd seen this 100 times before. She probably had. Back at the rental, I got a new letter in the mailbox. No return address again. I opened it slowly. Inside was a printed photo of a nursery. Not a crib anymore. A full nursery. Painted walls. Alphabet decals. A teddy bear in the corner. She'd written on the back in looping cursive, "Still hoping you'll come home soon. This baby deserves both of us." There wasn't anger in that message. There was calculation. Strategy. As if she still believed she could guilt me into coming back, like I'd melt over pastels and plush animals. I sat down on the floor and stared at that photo for a long time. Then I tore it in half. Not because I was angry, but because I refused to be tricked into raising a lie. I wasn't coming back. Not for her. Not for that nursery. Not to fix what she broke with full knowledge of the damage it would cause. But I knew she wouldn't stop there. She wasn't the type to give up quietly. The next move she made would change everything. And she'd make it very, very public. I didn't find out through Mara. I found out through a coworker. That's what stung the most. I was standing in line at the Pineford DMV, trying to update my driver's license address to keep Mara from tracking me through state records. The guy in front of me smelled like gasoline, and I was halfway through deleting spam from my email when I saw it. A message from Emily, the HR assistant at my old job. Is this your wife? Just saw this on Facebook. Wasn't sure if you knew. She'd attached a screenshot. The moment I opened it, my stomach twisted so hard it felt like someone had reached inside and yanked my insides around. There it was. A black and white ultrasound photo posted to Mara's profile. The caption read, 10 weeks along. He may have walked away from us, but I'll raise this baby with all the love he ran out of. There were hearts. So many hearts. And comments. You're so strong. That baby's lucky to have a mama like you. He'll regret leaving you, trust me. I felt sick. She didn't just tell the world she was pregnant. She painted me as a heartless monster who walked out the second things got difficult. No context. No details. Just the story of a poor abandoned woman carrying a child left behind by a coward. It was working too. People were eating it up. Her mom commented, "We'll get through this, baby. Curtis was never good enough for you anyway." I shut my phone off. Right there in the DMV. I walked out of line and straight back to my car. I couldn't breathe. My hands were trembling so bad I couldn't even fit the key into the ignition on the first try. This wasn't just manipulation anymore. This was defamation. She was shaping the narrative like Nolan had warned me, spinning the world around her into a stage and making sure I was the villain in her little tragedy. She even tagged my old workplace in the post. Tagged my mother, for God's sake. When I called my mom, she didn't even ask how I was doing. She just said, "Why would you leave her pregnant, Curtis?" Her voice cracked halfway through it. I could hear the disappointment. Like she believed it. Like my own mother thought I'd turned into a ghost when a woman needed me most. I didn't defend myself. I couldn't. It's hard to explain betrayal when the facts sound so normal on paper. My wife is pregnant. That sounds like something to celebrate. But the baby isn't mine, and she wants me to raise it anyway. That part somehow always gets lost in translation. But what happened next was what truly broke the spell for me. Later that week, I received a package. No return address, again. Just my name, scribbled on the label in the same sharp handwriting. Inside was a small stuffed giraffe. That in itself wouldn't have crushed me. But underneath it was a printed birth plan. A birth plan. She had put my name in the support partner field. Had mapped out what she wanted me to do during labor. Where I would stand. What music I would play. That she wanted me to cut the cord. It was like I wasn't a person to her anymore. Just a role. A placeholder. A safe man. The guy who wouldn't scream, who wouldn't cheat, who wouldn't abandon her child, even if it wasn't his. But I would. I had. I needed to. I called Nolan that night and told him to file the legal documents. Everything. A formal declaration of non-paternity, restraining any attempt to use my name or insurance. He said it might stir trouble. I said good. Let it stir. I wasn't her husband anymore. I wasn't her safety net. And I sure as hell wasn't her co-parent. She wanted to play public games? So be it. The next chapter was mine to write. And I had just one thing left to send her before I vanished for good. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was grief wearing a new disguise. Maybe I just wanted her to finally see what she'd done through something she couldn't twist or repost or make sentimental on social media. But I decided to send Mara a gift box. Not a gesture of goodwill. Not a peace offering. It was the last message she'd ever get from me. I spent 2 hours walking through the aisles of a department store, grabbing things that made no sense unless you knew the story. A bottle of prenatal vitamins, unopened. A tiny pack of diapers, still sealed. A framed photo of us on our wedding day that I had kept in my office, only now I'd taken a red marker and written across the glass, "Erase the lie, not the man." The last thing I added was a copy of the notarized legal statement Nolan helped me file, the one that formally declared I had no biological or legal connection to the child. It was short, precise, cold, but necessary. I slipped it into an envelope and taped it to the inside of the box. On the outside, I scribbled a note in blue ink. You made the plan without me. Now live in it without me. I left the box at the shipping center anonymously. No return label. No tracking. No signature required. It arrived 3 days later. How do I know? Because the messages started pouring in. Again. But this time, they weren't just from Mara's inner circle. Strangers. People I didn't know. People I'd never met began messaging my burner phone, my email, even finding me on an old LinkedIn profile I hadn't updated in 4 years. One of them wrote, "How could you humiliate her like that during her pregnancy? She's been through enough." Another said, "You're a coward, and I hope you never find peace." But the one that really stuck was a voicemail. From Mara herself. Her voice was trembling, not with sadness, but fury so sharp it cut through the static. "I don't know what I ever saw in you, Curtis. You think walking away makes you strong? You think sending me diapers and legal forms makes you the bigger man? You're disgusting. You've embarrassed me. You've ruined everything." That last sentence hit different. Not "you've ruined our marriage." Not "you've broken my heart." Just, "You've ruined everything." It was never about us. It was about control. The appearance. The illusion of a man standing beside her through a story she had crafted like a performance. When I refused to be the audience, the backup actor, the emotional mule, she turned me into the villain. And now, when I made it public that I wasn't playing along, she was exposed. And that's when it got worse. Mara posted again. This time, it wasn't passive-aggressive or weepy. It was fire. She published a long, dramatic post about emotional abandonment, manipulation, and how some men pretend to be victims when they're actually the ones destroying lives. She hinted at abuse. She never said my name, but everyone knew. She even included a picture of her crying, hand on her stomach, next to that same crib, the one I never asked for, now dressed with a blanket embroidered with the words, "Love makes a family." I didn't respond. I didn't fight back. But I felt something in me buckle under the weight of it all. I thought disappearing would protect me. I thought cutting contact would keep the drama at bay. But all I'd done was leave a vacuum she happily filled with her fantasy. And I realized something terrifying. Truth doesn't matter when the lie is louder. So I made a decision. No more silence. No more running. If Mara wanted a public battle, then I'd give her one. But not out of revenge. Out of self-preservation. Because the next time she tried to destroy me, I'd already be holding the match. It wasn't about clearing my name anymore. It was about reclaiming the version of myself I recognized before Mara's carefully orchestrated collapse turned me into some faceless villain in her public soap opera. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I told my story. Not for attention. Not to go viral. I didn't plaster it on Facebook or tag her family or post photos with arrows pointing to who said what. I just opened a blank document and started typing. Every word burned. Not because they were lies, but because they were finally the truth I hadn't dared speak out loud. I wrote about the night I found the crib. The shock. The way she said, "It's not yours, but we'll raise it together," like that was normal. I wrote about the silent guilt campaign she launched, the way her friends and relatives came at me like I'd abandoned a family I never agreed to build. I included facts. Screenshots. Her own words, without twisting them. Then I sent it. Not to her. To her employer. I hesitated before clicking send. My hands hovered above the keyboard. But the longer I stared at the screen, the more I remembered all the subtle threats she'd made during our marriage. How she'd once told me, "You're too boring to leave, but too soft to fight back." She used to laugh when she said things like that, but she meant every word. Her job was everything to her. She worked in corporate outreach for a national nonprofit. Public image was their lifeblood. She built a reputation as a voice for women in crisis. She was hosting panels, giving interviews, all while sending me legal threats and using my name and insurance behind my back. So I sent them the file. No commentary. Just facts. Clean. Brutal. True. I didn't hear back. Not immediately. But the next morning, something changed. For the first time in weeks, Mara didn't post anything. No filtered bump selfies. No moody quotes. No open-ended jabs at toxic men. Silence. That was louder than any accusation she'd thrown at me. Then came the call. Unknown number. I answered, expecting another anonymous hate spewer. Instead, it was Mara's supervisor. Her voice was calm, measured. She thanked me for providing the information, said they'd be conducting an internal review. I asked if she was going to be fired. The woman didn't answer, she just said, "We take all cases of personal misconduct very seriously, especially when it contradicts the public messaging of our leadership. That was all I needed to hear. The next message I received was from Mara herself. This time, no anger, no demands, no performance. Just 3 words. How could you? I didn't answer. I stared at that message and wondered, how many times had I asked her that same question silently, while she made decisions for both of us? When she brought another man into our marriage without even flinching. When she looked me in the eye and told me I'd be raising his child. She made her choices. I just finally made mine. But the silence didn't last long. 2 days later, I came home from the store and found a woman sitting on the steps of my rental. Blonde. Expensive coat. Crying. It was Jenna, Mara's best friend. She looked at me like I'd just run over her dog. She's not okay, she said. She's spiraling. You have no idea what you've done. I didn't invite her in. I didn't even ask how she found me. I just stood there, waiting. Jenna wiped her eyes. She's talking about leaving her job. She's having panic attacks. She's scared you're going to ruin her completely. I didn't say anything. What could I say? She's pregnant, Curtis. I finally spoke. With someone else's child. Jenna looked down, like she couldn't argue that. Then she said something that changed everything. She lied about the father. She doesn't even know who he is. That hit harder than I expected. Not because I felt sorry for her, but because I realized how deep the hole had gotten. She'd lost control of her own narrative. Even she didn't know where the truth ended anymore. But I did. And I knew I couldn't turn back. Because the final chapter hadn't been written yet. And what came next? That would be the day she finally realized I was never coming back. I hadn't planned to ever see her again. That wasn't some dramatic vow or angry declaration. It was just a quiet decision made in a motel room with bad lighting and a worse mattress. But life has a way of tightening every screw until something has to snap. And for me, it snapped the moment I opened my mailbox and saw a letter from the county clerk's office. Inside was a document short, plain, bureaucratic. It was a formal petition to declare me as the presumed father. Not Mara's handwriting. This was legal. Filed. Signed. Delivered. She hadn't stopped. Even after everything, the lies, the posts, the smear campaign, the gift box, the job fallout, she still filed paperwork to legally tie me to the child growing inside her. I stared at that letter for a long time. Something in me went perfectly still. Not angry. Not shocked. Just resolved. I didn't want to talk to her. I didn't want an apology. I wanted closure, not the kind where 2 people cry in a coffee shop and say maybe one day they'll be friends. I mean real closure. The kind you walk away from and never turn your head again. So I showed up. No warning. No message. Just me, outside the house we used to share. The lawn was overgrown. The mailbox sagged on one hinge. The nursery window was lit. I rang the bell once. She opened the door in seconds, like she'd been waiting. She looked different. Not just tired. Not just pregnant. But like the version of her that used to wear confidence like armor had been peeled away, inch by inch. Her eyes met mine and widened. She didn't speak. I stepped inside before she could say anything and handed her a folder. My attorney's final response. A formal counterpetition rejecting paternity, paired with a cease and desist for continued defamation. Inside were copies of every message, every post, every recorded voicemail. It was a wall of truth. She opened it slowly. Her fingers trembled. When she reached the sonogram printout with her caption highlighted in yellow, she flinched. "This is the last time you see me," I said. My voice wasn't angry. It was flat. Final. You dragged my name, my silence, and my decency into the mud. I gave you chances to stop. You didn't. Mara blinked rapidly. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Then, like a final gasp, she said, "I didn't know what else to do." And there it was, not an apology. Not accountability. Just desperation in its rawest form. "You should have done what I did," I said, stepping back toward the door. "Tell the truth and live with it." As I turned, she called after me. What am I supposed to do now? I didn't answer. But she wasn't really asking. She already knew the answer. She'd spent months crafting a fantasy with me in the center, the devoted husband who'd raise a child that wasn't his, whose silence would serve as permission, whose loyalty would be weaponized as weakness. But the moment I stepped outside the narrative, it collapsed on itself. The audience left. The curtain dropped. And there was nothing left to perform. I didn't go home that night, because that place was never my home again. I went to a quiet motel on the edge of town, ordered greasy food, watched a movie I didn't remember the name of, slept for the first time in weeks without checking the locks twice. The next day, I filed my final paperwork. Change of address. Updated identity protections. I was done running. But I wasn't hiding anymore, either. Let Mara sort through the wreckage of the house she built on lies. I had no more messages for her. The next move? That would be mine. And it had nothing to do with her anymore. 2 months passed. No more letters. No more anonymous packages. No more messages from friends of hers demanding I be a better man. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding for years. I spent those weeks rebuilding pieces of myself I didn't know how to road it. I started eating breakfast again, real breakfast, not vending machine muffins and gas station coffee. I picked up an old camera I hadn't touched since college. Walk trails in Pineford I'd always passed by in a blur of distraction. I even got a dog. A mutt named Harper who barked at pine cones and snored like a chainsaw. But most importantly, I stopped feeling like someone who had failed. Because here's the thing no one tells you. When someone manipulates you slowly, day after day, lie after lie, it becomes easy to confuse silence with safety. I thought I was being patient, forgiving, steady. But in truth, I was afraid. Afraid to confront what I knew deep down, that love isn't supposed to be a trap. And Mara's love was always a test. When I could never pass. I didn't hear from her again. I heard from about her, sure, whispers through town, the occasional forwarded article. Her employer placed her on leave. She made a post claiming burnout and betrayal, but even that faded into the algorithm eventually. I never responded. Not once. That part of my life was over. Instead, I focused on the life I was building. I got a job at a local financial co-op, small, quiet, honest work. The kind where people remember your name and ask how your dog's doing. I moved into a little blue house with a creaky porch and a second-hand armchair that somehow made me feel more grounded than any piece of furniture we ever bought together. One Sunday afternoon, I sat on that porch with Harper's head resting on my foot, a glass of cold lemonade in hand, and I realized something simple but profound. I wasn't broken. I was free. Mara had tried to rewrite the story so many times, but in the end, I didn't have to argue with her version. I just had to walk away from it. Quietly. Permanently. And in doing so, I discovered the version of myself I buried under compromise and silence. I wasn't the man who raised another man's child because he was afraid of being alone. I wasn't the one who begged for love from someone who weaponized it. I was the man who saw the trap and stepped over it. Who walked away without screaming, without begging, without destroying anything except the false life she built around me. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need applause. I just needed peace. And now, I have it.